So, hello everyone, how are you today? I hope you're having a great time. If you don't know me yet, my name is Christina and I'm here to help you. I want to help every single one of you by achieving your goals. Today, I have a special guest with me. She is also a teacher of English and I will be asking her some questions. So we will have a little chat about our experience as teachers and hopefully this will help me also improve my teaching skills. So please welcome everyone, Nena. She has. Nena is from. Where are you from, Nena?
I'm from Seville, the south of Spain.
Oh, where do you currently live now?
I live in Barcelona because, well, I'm from Seville, but I lived there until I was 19. Then I left and I lived in the Netherlands and then in Barcelona and then in New Zealand. And now I live in Barcelona again. So, I mean, I'm 40, so I've spent more than half of my life somewhere else. But I'm originally from Seville, yeah.
So, as you traveled quite a bit, how many languages do you speak?
Well, I speak Dutch, English, and Spanish fluently. Mm-hmm. My Catalan is so-so. Mm-hmm. I do understand German quite well because of my Dutch, because they are similar somehow. And I tried to learn Maori, but that's fucking difficult.
Well, yeah. I feel you with this type of Asian languages. And especially New Zealand, yeah, the one Maori from New Zealand. I am studying Chinese.
Yeah.
So it's quite challenging, especially when you're studying at an older age. So how long have you been teaching for?
I've been teaching, officially for 15 years. But I started before when I was living in the Netherlands. I got there when I was 19 and I learned Dutch and English. So a few years later, my friends, like my Dutch friends, wanted to learn Spanish. My Spanish friends wanted to learn English or Dutch. So I started helping them, teaching them, and I started tutoring. And then I came to Spain. And in Spain is where I started working at a school, 14 years ago, actually.
Oh. And how long have you been using social media to spread your knowledge?
That started, 2 years and a half ago, something like that. Yeah.
What was the
Not very long, actually.
Oh, that's right. What was the first platform? Because I know you have a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, but I've had that for a year now. And I started with Instagram and Facebook 2 years and a half ago, yeah.
How many followers do you have currently on Instagram?
On Instagram, I've got 23,000.
That's so good. Yeah, so you've grown quite a bit in 2 years.
Yeah, I'm quite happy about it.
In the sense of, this is something that I always talk about with my colleagues, is about British English, American English. Which one do you prefer?
It's not actually about preferring any. What I teach is more British than American, but not because I've chosen it. I learned English talking to British people and foreigners, and because I learned in the Netherlands. But then I moved to New Zealand. So really what I try to teach is that there are more than two kinds of English. It's not British or American, and not even British, there's one British and one American kind of English. So what I try to teach is just try to teach people to communicate in English. Accents or the kind of English you use is not that important. And when I came from, now I lost it a little bit, but when I came from New Zealand, at the beginning, I spoke like Kiwi English. My accent had changed and I changed some of the vowels and expressions and stuff like that. And many people told me at the beginning, or,
when you started,
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So this is taking me to the next question, because us as non-native speakers, we faced the challenge of learning English. And sometimes students prefer to have a native speakers, like to have a native speaker English teacher. So how do you feel about that?
Well, actually, I know everywhere on social media, and there's always this native, non-native, who is better. And I don't think it depends on whether you're native or not. And it depends on the experience, qualifications, and passion you have for teaching languages or English. Because when I was in New Zealand, I taught Spanish, but I actually think I'm a better English teacher than a Spanish teacher because I did English philology at university. I know more about English phonetics or history even than Spanish. And then this is from my part, but then you have the students part. And I know because a few years ago, I was the director of an English school. And you have this thing of people always asking for native teachers. But then at that school, for example, I had two native teachers and one who wasn't a native speaker, but he was a great teacher. So when people tried the different teachers for a reason, because they went in a group and then they changed to another one, or one teacher couldn't come and the other one took the lesson over or whatever, and many people start asking for the native ones. But then when they know a good one who is a native, they immediately want to change because they realize it's not about being native or not. It's about your knowledge.
The quality of the lesson. Wow,
exactly.
How interesting you make it as a teacher.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
I agree with you. Sometimes I've had students telling me that their teacher were native. They have several teachers even. And a particular student told me that her teacher was like just reading aloud for her, and that was pretty much the lesson that she was having. Sometimes not having a qualification, but being native gives them a little bit more room, but then you realize that you're not improving as much as you would do with someone who's qualified. That's the thing I always tell my students. If you want to learn English, if you want to take lessons, don't go always for the cheapest one because it's offering it to you. Go for the one that has a qualification. Check the background, check how efficient is she, and this kind of thing always helps.
Check how professional the person is. Of course. I've also seen I worked at a school for many years too. And there I had this thing of people, especially for high levels, people want to be with native speakers, but then many students did a lesson with me for a reason, and then they wanted to change to my groups. And so, but I've also seen teachers being fired because somebody has asked, what's the difference between will and going to for the future? And they couldn't answer. Because it's this thing of, of course, I mean, I know when to use one or the other, but I don't know how to explain it. So I guess like what a student needs is somebody who can explain things. And I think that non-native have a certain advantage because we've been there. So we know the difficulties in learning the schwa, for example. A native speaker can never tell you how difficult it is, or how to compare it with your own language. Because I do use Spanish sometimes in my lessons to say, okay, I don't know, the short E is something between our E and our S, so try to put the tongue in the middle. So I do use something they know to bring them closer to what they don't know.
Absolutely.
So that's something a native speaker wouldn't be able to do. So we all have, and of course, it's true that I may make mistakes when, I don't know, in pronunciation or whatever, or because it's not my native language. I make mistakes when I speak Spanish too. I mean,
making mistakes is something that everyone does. I mean, I've lived in the UK for 7 years, and native speakers make mistakes in their own language. We all make mistakes at the end of the day. So I think it doesn't matter how well you speak, it's how well you communicate and how well the person next to you is understanding everything that you're saying. So at the end of the day, if there is communication,
that's the point, isn't
that's
it?
the whole point, absolutely. So what do you think about the educational system in Spain, especially in schools, when it comes to learning English?
Okay, and do I have to be polite? Or?
I want you to be as honest as you can.
Well, I think it's very shitty. So, come on, I left Spain when I was 19, and I had really high grades at the school in English, and I did my A levels, and I had a quite good mark. And then I moved to a country where Spanish wasn't spoken, and it was hell. You know, sometimes I wish I had a notebook with me to communicate, because, yes, you get an A in English at the school, but then you can't have the most simple conversation. Come on.
I was nodding all the time. The first time I visited, I think I went to Ireland, and I was in the south of Ireland in Cork. And I was with a host family. Oh man, I couldn't understand anything they were saying at all. Like, he was saying something, he had a very, very strong accent. And I was like, And one of the days he was like, really, like, seriously? And I was like, no. So,
but in the meantime, you're thinking, where did those 12 years studying at the school go?
Yeah, but because we are so grammar based, so we are good in grammar. When it comes to grammar, we nail it. I mean, when I went to do the CELTA course, most of my colleagues were native speakers. They didn't know the tenses. They didn't know the tenses, anything. Like, I remember having one of the lessons that we had, we were facing the conditionals, like how many conditionals do we have in English? And they were all like, oh my gosh, such a headache. And I just like, 5 minutes. And he looked at me like, he's like, turn off your page. Don't show it to anyone. I want them to do it by themselves. Just go grab a coffee or whatever. Like, I don't let you tell them because I know you know that. So yes, we learn, and it's so grammar based. But when we have to have to face ourselves in front of native speakers
or non-natives, I mean, when we have to use it in context for any reason. But I think the main problem is that the classrooms are too crowded to have communicative lessons at the school. If you have 30 kids in a lesson, I mean, the only thing you can do is teach them some grammar, make them read some text, and not much more. So I think that in the past it was grammar based, and my teachers spoke to me in Spanish when I was at the school. I mean, that was the level. I think that's changing, and that, you know, rightly, teachers are trying to do different things and introduce more listening and speaking, but still at the end of the day, how are you going to have a communicative lesson with 30 students or 30 teenagers?
Yeah, absolutely. 30 teenagers is just impossible. My last student, he studies in the school I used to study when I was a teenager, and he has the same teachers, and they still do the same, but obviously the new system is telling them that you have to do communicative English. So they have speaking. I didn't have any speaking back in the days. I didn't have to prepare for a speaking exam at all. Everything was written and listening. That's it. But now they have a speaking. Like he was like, "Oh, can you practice with me? Like if I was going to a doctor, what would you tell me?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." I mean, I'm happy to see that they are changing some bits. But I see other things, like I have to memorize the irregular verbs, like be was be, become became become. Yes. Yes. So
Excuse me,
that
21st
is,
century. Hello.
yeah, I know. And I was like, where's the context to teach that? Like, how can a child, I mean, a teenager in this case, can understand the irregular verbs without putting
And
them in the
what's
context?
the point? Again, what's the point of knowing the verbs if you can put them in a sentence?
Absolutely. It's so discouraging. And then my sister, I had to help her, obviously, because I wanted her to give it a chance, to give a chance to English. And because back in the days she didn't have any internet connection, I told her, well, why don't you go to the official language school? And then when I saw her this Christmas having the lessons, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so boring.
Again.
Like, I mean, I understand that they have, their level is elementary level, but she was saying one word in English and translating it and saying it three times in Spanish. So every single sentence in a text, she was translating it. And I was like, why don't you let the students think by themselves? And if they actually don't understand something out of the text, then you tell them in Spanish, because obviously it's elementary. You can use some
or you can try to first
or you can try to explain it. I mean, there are so many ways to because I had to teach a complete elementary level, like beginners level. Some of them were illiterate, so because it was like some of the people coming in the UK and they don't speak and they don't have the same alphabet, so they couldn't even write the words. And yet you still had to communicate in English because you couldn't speak their language. And there are so many ways that you can do. You can do imitation, you can do sounds, and you can do a lot of things. So at the end of the day, you have to kind of force them to face the challenge of speaking in English.
And to use English, not to translate it into
to get
Spanish
used to also, and get used to listening as well. Listening is such a good skill that you develop whilst learning English, because obviously if there is no listening skills, if you're translating everything, you're just kind of chewing everything, and it's the kind of things that we're not doing anymore.
Listening is what brings you to speaking afterwards too. That's how children learn naturally. First they listen,
repeat, and
then
repeat.
They make the connections and imitate and try to repeat the things that they've been listening to, and so but I think there's so much to be done. So it's not only the system or the teachers, but it's the whole thing. More money should be invested so that the students could. Nowadays you have, at least also in, not at all the schools, but you have the conversation assistants as well. And that's a good thing that has been introduced. So they get students bit by bit to have a conversation with a native speaker and so on. But not all the schools have it. And I think they should divide students, but that costs money because you need more teachers. And
I understand that, because obviously the more money you invest, the more opportunities you have. I mean, I study in a British university and I can see a huge difference. We have something called Language Speaking Corner. So every Wednesday there is a meeting. Now, obviously everything is done via Zoom, and you can communicate with people from everywhere, and you can have a chat with them if they want to practice English or you want to practice a different language, French, German, Italian, Chinese. There are students for everything, even Japanese as well. But the problem is some people don't actually want to do this kind of exchange, and because maybe if you're studying a language, you have to get curious about the culture and the way people speak. Sometimes I was doing the other day something talking about sarcasm in British English. So the things that we have learned in schools probably have a connotation in English depending on the region where you live in. Sometimes as it is, or maybe it has a different meaning actually.
But the same happens here. I mean, I'm from the south and I live in the north. Jokes are not always understood the same way and stuff like that. And but I think that's a problem many Spanish people have when it comes to have a conversation, is that they don't feel comfortable. And that's another thing that people should understand, which is that it's not that one day you start speaking English in the same way you speak Spanish. That's not going to happen. First, you have to make mistakes and make very simple sentences. And you may feel a bit stupid sometimes because you don't know how to say something, or you're saying something like a child. But I mean, you have to be a child in the language first. And then a toddler, you start being a baby, saying only isolated words, and then a toddler, and then a child, and then you will come, and this takes time.
Practice makes progress always.
Yeah.
And some people, they're not patient enough.
Yeah. And it's not only that, I have students, or I've had students who had been studying English for years, and they knew a lot and they understood a lot, but they felt really embarrassed to speak because when they spoke, they made a lot of mistakes. It's like, but you have to go through that phase. It's not gonna happen. It doesn't matter how much you know. That doesn't mean that the day you're going to say it, everything is gonna come out of your mouth just perfect. That's not gonna happen. So and it's okay. Nobody's gonna laugh at you. Nobody's gonna think, oh, that person is stupid because she used on instead of in. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I was talking to someone
cares.
about that.
People will probably be trying to get what you're saying and will help you communicate and so, and bit by bit, that's the way you learn. Trying, making mistakes, and changing things bit by bit.
Yeah, and embracing those mistakes. Sometimes you can get a good experience out of it. I've done so many mistakes. I've made so many mistakes.
Exactly.
This kind of thing. So obviously, sometimes you correct yourself, you find it out, and then you can correct yourself. Sometimes you don't realize, but there's still the communication flows. So if the communication flows, that's not a big issue. One of the things I normally tell my students is like, making mistakes will give you experience, because from mistakes we learn. We learn always. And if someone because obviously you're going to find stupid people, and you're going to find always people who think differently and they don't agree with that. Like, oh, you have to be perfect. Perfection doesn't exist. And if you want to be perfect in a language, you will be always miserable.
Yeah, because that's not going to happen. I mean, it doesn't exist.
And I want to ask you about the mistakes you've done as a teacher, because obviously I'm learning and I realized that it's a whole new world for me, and I'm probably making mistakes. The funny thing is, like, I'm only teaching one-to-one. I don't have the chance yet to teach in a group lesson because of this situation. But in the future, I would love to be in a classroom and see the environment in the classroom, because when I did my CELTA, I saw it and I loved it. I loved the diversity, the amount of different backgrounds that you can always teach and you can learn from them. But facing mistakes as a teacher is also something that we have to
of course. And there's a process too, because when I started teaching children, teenagers, and low levels, and I started English philology when I was already teaching English at the school, and then I was trying things that I learned at uni in the classroom and stuff like that. But I think the mistakes I made, especially at the beginning, was to prepare lessons. Prepare the lessons without taking students into account. Like, when you work at private schools, they always want you to use the book, and it's very important to use the book because people buy the book, so they have to use the book. So at the beginning it was like, okay, so if I have to teach the book, I don't do everything. I do what I consider is important, but I based my curriculum or whatever, or the syllabus, I base it on the book. And with time, I learned that, okay, the school wants you to use the book, that's all right. But what you have to do is, depending on the group you have and the needs they have the material you have to them, and adapt to them, and not the other way around. It's not like, okay, I'm going to teach you. And I did that the first years. Okay, I have this material and I have to use it in the classroom, and they have to learn what I'm telling you. And it doesn't work like that. You know?
Oh dear, yes. I agree with you. I remember doing this, I don't know if you know this brand, I think it's from Oxford, English File. Yeah. Elementary level.
Yeah.
And the vocabulary list for elementary level for one lesson was like 24 new words. And some of them were, okay, there could be like A2, some of them were complete beginners. So how can you do 24 words for someone who actually doesn't know? Probably more than 5 words altogether. So you have to adapt it, obviously. You don't want to leave all those high students down, so you can give them something extra, maybe at the end of the lesson, or you can actually promote a little bit more learning after the lesson, like more homework to find out more words or something like that, or check the book. But with those other students,
what is important too,
absolutely.
Is, okay, so give resources for those who have a higher level or learn faster. But I think you have to make sure the ones who need more time or have a lower level don't need to learn everything you tell them or you teach them straight away. So I always tell students too that it's not important, and everything is an introduction for the next introduction, because in English you repeat things so many times. At the beginning level, you see, I don't know, you see the verb to be, but you're gonna see it again the rest of your life because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, the conditionals. You start with one and then you add another one, and when you study the new one, you revise the previous one. So it's not that you're gonna see this today and never again, so you better study it. No, it's okay. You're gonna see it again. You're gonna see it in context. You know, like, do what is good for you, get until you can get, and that's it. I mean, there's not, you must do this or you must do that. Just do whatever. It comes naturally. Try to use the things in context. Try to, but if there are 20 words, try to learn 5. If you learn those 5, maybe you can try with another 5. But don't try to learn 20 words at the same time.
Yeah. I was just like, my colleagues and I, we were so discouraged with that book because we thought the level wasn't, it was such a high level, and the backgrounds of the people, the cultural backgrounds. You now working with Spanish people, but you worked in different countries and you face different backgrounds, and the culture fact is like some of the texts are just done for the European community. The rest of them are forgotten, like people from Asia, people from Malaysia, people from anywhere in the world. They don't know this. For example, if we're talking about celebrities, they don't know who Brad Pitt is. And we have a text about him, so maybe this can also be adapted. That's why when we learn it, when we see the book, and you have to work throughout this book. If you see something that you don't like, you can adapt it. There's always ways to adapt it.
Omit it and introduce something else. Or I don't know. Like I do use books, but I use the parts I like and the things of course, all the things I think my students may like and things like that. And what I think is not for them, I just omit it. Move on to them,
Yeah. I do the same. Like if I say, okay, today I want my student to learn about, if it's elementary level, the difference between the present simple and the present continuous, for example. What is the difference between that? You're going to take something from here, something from there, and then you put them together, and then you're going to give the lesson that way. I like that way of teaching because it's more creative at the end of the day, and it's not so square.
Yeah, of course. And what is important too is you can get something from here and something from there, but then you have to bring them to their life. So for example, with the present simple and the present continuous, at the beginning, I used a lot of materials and whatever, communicative, not communicative, but something that really works is to bring things to people's life. So present simple, present continuous, make them describe, make them bring a photo they have with somebody they love or their families or their friends or whatever, and make them on the one hand describe what they're doing in the picture. So you use in the present continuous and they see how you use it. Then tell them to tell you about those people, what they do or what they're doing at the moment, and connecting that thing you want to teach them to their real lives. And when they want to explain something to you, they forget they are learning English. They just want you to understand what they want to explain. So they start, using this fear to
they start to get immersed in what they're doing.
Exactly.
That's the whole point, to feel them that, like, to make them feel that this is not just a lesson. This is for you to be able to express yourself to some extent, and to talk about the things that you like and dislike
in your life. I mean,
obviously we all like to talk about our families, so bringing a photo
or Brad Pitt. Don't talk about Brad Pitt if you don't like him. If you like him and you want to talk about him, do it, but don't talk about Brad Pitt, dude. Talk about your best friend, which makes more sense for you, and you would know what to say about that person. So just bring it to your reality and your life, and make it yours. You have to get the language and make it yours. And that's also why when you say British or American, I mean, speak your own language as long as you're understood. Then if you have to do an exam, we'll see.
I know. Do you know something that happened to me back in the days? I did start English philology. I never finished the degree. I got a little bit discouraged by the whole system and how it's taught. At least where I live, I didn't actually like it. But one of the things that we were told is, like, you have to choose an accent.
Yeah, right.
Like, you cannot say this because it's British,
Jamaican,
and then that. And that in American, you have to choose. Like, you have to use the correct vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just learning English. What's the matter? What's the problem? So even
but then again, if you go to Australia or New Zealand, and the vocabulary they use, some words are British, some words are American, some words are not used in Britain or America.
Absolutely.
So then what? They're not talking proper English.
Yes, that's how I felt. That's how I felt. Like, oh, so I have to choose. If I want to have an accent, I have to have British or American accent. And because my teacher was American, I said, well, American, look at me now.
Okay, you win.
And I can mix stuff. Like, I do say things like cookies, and it doesn't matter. People understand.
Even British, and nowadays, film, series, and so even
we're so influenced.
Probably even the Queen says movies now instead of films.
I say movies. Do you go to the movies? So have you watched the movie?
Yeah, but everything is mixed nowadays, and something that people have to understand too is that languages are living things, and they change and they evolve, and they keep changing, and they keep getting influenced by other languages and by the people who speak them and stuff like that. So there's not right or wrong, really, and there's a better or worse way to communicate. But there's not right or wrong, and something that is wrong today can be right in a couple of years. So it's not the end of the world.
And it's good to know the differences. I mean, how different. So even they speak the same language, but there's still so many differences between them. Cultural, and when it comes to the language as well. Like, they have a way of living, and English is different. So obviously it's interesting from the point of view as a student. When you become a teacher, you also become a student for life. That's what I say to my students. You don't learn a language for just one exam that you want to pass. You want to learn a language for your whole life. And if you ever want to become a teacher, you will always be a student, because you have to study most
of
times.
course.
You have to keep yourself.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, because sometimes you're preparing a lesson and then it's like, whoa, what's that word? Or
It happens, and sometimes you just have to tell your student, okay, okay, you found this word, I don't know what it means.
I mean,
okay,
I'm not a
have a look at
dictionary.
it. I mean,
there are dictionaries for that,
But it happens as well in our own language.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes my mom says words like kind of sort of old-fashioned, and because I've lived in the UK for such a long time, I've forgotten Spanish to some extent. Like my level of Spanish has gone down because I'm using English most time. Like this is how I'm living now, and I have to accept that I don't know everything, even though I'm a teacher.
Nobody knows, but nobody knows even 50% of their mother tongue. It's impossible. I mean, if we start talking about, I don't know, physics, probably neither of us can say much in any language. So,
So this takes me to one of my last questions. Like, referring to knowing everything, what advice would you give to those students that feel frustrated because they feel they don't know everything?
Well, I would say that focus on what you know and not on what you don't know. If you use what you know wisely, you can get whatever you like.
Yeah.
And that's a fact, because nobody knows everything. And as I was saying before, even native speakers who know a lot of things know maybe 50% of the language. So you as a student, if you know 10%, feel very successful, because that's already a lot, and knowing one thing takes you to the next. So just enjoy what you know, feel proud of what you know, and forget about what you don't know, and let it come. Don't
get discouraged by the things that you don't know. Feel proud of the things that you actually.
And I have students who get very frustrated about what they don't know, but they know a lot of things. And we are having a fluent conversation in English about something, and they are telling me like, but I always make mistakes with this and with that and blah, blah, blah. And I am like, but are you noticing the language you are using to explain that to me now? And you're just thinking about this thing that you don't use right when there are another 10 that you use just perfectly. Why don't you pay attention to those things? And you didn't know those things 2 or 3 years ago. So that means that the one thing you don't know, it's gonna come. I mean, be patient.
Yeah, that's another thing. We have to be patient as students. Like, I'm learning Chinese, and I've been studying English since I was a child, because I started in primary school. I was lucky enough to start when I was in primary school. And I've been learning English all along. And yes, I've always been motivated because I've always found languages quite interesting. So I've always had that sort of passion, that I never felt discouraged by the fact that I couldn't communicate very efficiently until obviously I moved to England. But now I see the differences between when you study when you're a child and now that you're studying when you are older. So for example, I'm studying Chinese, and I find Chinese very challenging. And sometimes I feel like I'm not progressing. But then when my teacher challenges me to have a conversation with her, I see that, okay, maybe I don't know how to express myself the way I would do in English or Spanish, but I know what I want to say, and I communicate it to her and she understands it. So there is communication at the end of the day. Basic communication, yes. So but this is just a step forward to my goal.
Yeah, and people have to understand that the learning process, even if you're a baby or if you're an adult, it doesn't really matter, but nothing is like this. So you go up, it happens a lot. People start learning, and at the beginning, you learn a lot, and it's like, whoa. And then you get to a level where you get stuck, or where you even go down a little bit. But that's all right. That's your brain putting things in order. And then one day it goes up again. So this goes like, you know, I get stuck, it goes down, it goes up, and then you get stuck. And so it's part of the process. And we have to understand that. And this happens with children. You know, I've seen lots of research in second language acquisition, but also first language acquisition, and it's exactly the same thing. Children usually start saying words clearly, but they get to a point where they start talking things that are difficult to understand again, because their brain is working on the grammar at that point. So it's like they start getting confused, but then at a certain point they start using grammar and vocabulary all together. So let's, you know, your brain work a little bit too, and don't get frustrated, because this moment where you are stuck or you feel you're going back is because your brain is really working hard or making things make sense. And that means that very soon something in your brain will do, and then you have this feeling, haven't you had that you feel like, okay, this, I reached my limit and you're gonna get better. But then one day suddenly you're speaking and you're like, what? Who said that? You know?
Yeah,
oh, it was me.
Yeah, that happened to me actually.
Like out of the blue.
That happened to me.
Happened to me so many times.
That like sometimes I was like, oh, I feel like I'm not progressing enough. And then, yes, obviously, I had the same experience when you told me that you went to a foreign country, and then you saw that I thought that I knew something that I didn't. But then it just needs some time. You just need some time to get adapted to that new environment. Just because everything is so new and you're just not used to that sort of language input as well. After 3 months, you felt more confident, and it happens to everyone. But for those who doesn't have the chance to travel abroad, I always tell them, the more you immerse yourself in the language, the better results you will get. So I'm not forcing you to read a whole book of, I don't know, like Harry Potter book, like 1,000 words, 1,000 pages. No, try to read maybe one paragraph at a time, and maybe next time you will read a page, and maybe you will read a whole chapter. But don't put yourself a big target. Try to do small things and try to maintain.
Reading is not only books. Read the news. Read an Instagram account of somebody you like and writes in English just 2 sentences.
Yeah. Or even, I don't know, text someone or write a comment, even though you're making mistakes. That's fine. It's part of the process of learning. Yeah,
definitely.
Now, my last question. So that is for me. What advice would you give me? Because I'm kind of a newbie here.
Okay.
I'm a newbie.
Well, I would tell you it's the same thing. Just pay attention to the things you see that work, and learn from the ones you see that don't really work. And I would tell you, like, not to get too obsessed with what others say is right or wrong, because there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong in learning. There's not right or wrong in teaching either. Everybody has its own way, and maybe my way may be the best for some people, but not for others, and your way might be the best for those people. So I just would say that be yourself, try things, and when you see things work, use them, and that's it.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm really happy and glad to meet you finally. I think in person one day maybe, but yes, now we have to do this way.
Yeah, this is the most similar thing to being in person we have nowadays. So.
Yes. Even with family and friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's such
even
a
with your
time.
neighbor, you know.
Yeah, we feel like strangers again. Like when we actually come out, weird. I think we're gonna feel so weird. Like it's going to be really weird when we are allowed going parties or even going on holidays. It's gonna feel so weird.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, this is a good chance also to get to know new people, because we pretty much just met
Yeah.
like really recently. And it's always good to know people that actually have the same sort of passion, and they have the same sort of thoughts. Like we are kind of in the same environment as well, which is good. And it's always good to learn from those. And like you said, try to take the things that you see that works and see if you can actually apply it to your own knowledge as well.
Yeah, make it yours.
Yeah.
Well, it was very nice to meet you too. We keep in touch.
We keep in touch, yes. And thank you very much for joining me. And well, you also you can follow her on Instagram as NENADEVOS. I will put the link down below. And she also has a YouTube channel that she started, she told me, a year ago.
Yeah.
So you can follow her, and that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you have a great time.
Good, you too. Thank you. Keep it up. Bye-bye.
Bye.